Welcome to our next episode of the Breakthrough Autism podcast. I am so excited to have with me today Fred Santini, board president of Shining Through that started in 1999. Not only that, but has a very distinguished career in the legal profession as a lawyer and father to a son with autism. Welcome, Fred.
Thank you, Nancy.
So happy to have you here
My pleasure.
and thrilled to talk about Shining Through. So this is such a wonderful story that I'm been waiting to share with everyone in terms of how Shining Through got started, what Shining Through is all about, and why you guys keep doing what you're doing to this day. So let's go back to 1999. We've got a group of parents who decide to start up a center for children with autism, a center that, helps via ABA. Remarkable. Why do that, Fred? How did this all start?
Well, if I can go back actually slightly prior to 1999, because I
Mhm.
think it gives merit to the story as well. When our son, Freddie, was diagnosed with autism, and back in the days, you can appreciate it was your son's autistic, good luck.
Mhm.
And they sent you on your merry way, and then you had to figure it out yourself what you're going to do because they didn't really give you any recommendations or anything. My wife and I were fortunate enough to attend a conference at the Geneva Center, and it was being presented by Dr. Ron Leaf, who was one of the founding gurus of actually studied under Dr. Lovaas, one of the founding
Mhm.
gurus of ABA IBI. We had never heard of it. So a 2 day session, and we watched this, and we saw these videos, and we said, "Oh my God, there's the hope we were looking for. Here's something we got to get ourselves into." So we started a home therapy program using his organization as the supervisors. And we hired a bunch of young ladies, young men, to be instructors. And like every home business, it has challenges, right? People were coming and going, people quitting. And we were seeing the rewards, but there was a lot of inconsistency. But one of the things we noticed that there wasn't a social part. It was always, him by himself in the house. And we heard of a center, a privately run center in Newmarket that was doing ABA, IBI, half day program. So we went to look at it and we liked what we saw. So we enrolled Freddie at the center. And everything was going well. We were seeing the progress. They had maybe 7, 8, 10 kids at the center. And the owner was going to do a fundraiser. And we, five of the fathers, five of the families, most of us Italian in nature, when we heard about his idea of a fundraiser, we quickly took over. And next thing we had 700 people at a banquet hall in
Of course.
Woodbridge.
Amazing. Yeah.
And he was impressed, and we helped him raise money. I think he needed to do air conditioner and new things for his building. And this was a privately run business. A few months later, we get a phone call, the five fathers, that he's going to shut it down. He wants to meet us, and we meet with him, and he's telling us he's going bankrupt, and he wants to shut it down. And panic set in. And I always jokingly say, which really isn't a joke, the fear of having to go home and tell our wives that our kids had nowhere to go
Mhm.
um, made us look at each other and say, well, why don't we do it?
Mhm. Especially Italian wives.
Exactly. Oh, listen, there would have been a lot of
Italian wives.
shouting
So
and
yeah.
yelling. Exactly.
and
And
and moms of children with autism.
exactly,
You got that
exactly.
going.
And
Yeah.
you know how
Yeah.
passionate they are. So I said, well, why don't we do it?
Yeah.
And I asked the gentleman if we can use this was an old building in Newmarket. If we can continue to use the space that he has, sublease it from him. And as you mentioned, Lord, I'm a lawyer, so I quickly went home. And the next day, I filed articles of incorporation for a non-for-profit organization. And then we started to get charitable status. And Shining Through Center for Children with Autism was created. We managed to keep the staff that he had, but we knew we needed to get better, bigger, and find new location and get better staff. So it started there. Um, Now we are 2023. We're no longer Newmarket. We had early in the process. I remember we approached one of the counselors, regional counselors in Vaughan, and the five fathers again, approached her, and she was amazed that our story was being told by five men as opposed to five
Yeah.
women. And part of our strategy is to get people in tears, and we had her in tears at the time. And I remember presenting it to her in a situation that, because back in the day we started hearing about these autism cases, and I said, the city of Vaughan has a problem. You guys have a problem.
Yeah.
We have a problem, but you have a problem as well. Why don't we partner up so we can help solve this problem? We need a location.
Mhm.
And sure enough, she was kind enough to put us in touch with a developer who had this old historic house on a condo site that they just did on city lands. So the city of Vaughan was kind enough to grant us a 40-year lease on lands free for free.
Wow.
But we had to negotiate the purchase of the house, and we did. And the funniest thing, so we negotiated the purchase of the house from the guy, and then right after that, these fathers, at the end of the day, came to that site, took off their suits, take off their whatever they had, and started to work to gut the place and create
Amazing.
Shining Through. We begged, borrowed, I don't want to say stole, but we begged and borrowed stuff.
Yeah.
And we developed our new phrase, our favorite color, which meant anything that was free became our favorite color. And recreated Shine Through in Vaughan. And that was our first location. And we took off from there. We filled it up pretty quickly. We had 25 children coming to the center. We hired, obviously, we had to have a person that was trained, not unlike yourself,
Mhm.
to run the program. And we created a board of directors, and the board of directors was basically consisted of some of the parents, but we thought it was important to have non-parents as
Mhm.
members of the board as well, because we thought a parent board member brings the passion, uh, the non-parent brings the objectivity, and you need a
Mhm.
bit of both. And so we've been there since, and we've seen the merits of it. My son Freddie now is just turned 3 years old. He was diagnosed at 5. He was diagnosed late because he had other health issues that slowed things down for us. But he was diagnosed late, and although he'll probably never be independent on his own,
Mhm.
he's completely independent within our household. He's verbal, communicates. He won't carry on a casual conversation, but he can let you know what he wants.
Mhm.
We could take him anywhere. He watches the dogs when my wife and I go out, so we can leave him alone. So
Amazing.
and we owe all that to IBI, ABA, whatever the phrase is today,
Yeah.
is shining through. And it was a godsend to us that we did this and continue to do so. And because of that, despite the fact that my son left
Yeah.
at the age of 13, and only because we thought he outgrew what the center could provide back in the day, I continue to be involved because I believe in the cause, and I believe that families and children truly benefit from this type of service that we provide.
It's amazing. It's just remarkable to Fred. We've known each other a long time, and
Yes,
I
we
know of
have.
Shining Through, and I really respect the organization and the work that's done. And I've, very well known in the community for remarkable things. But to hear you share that journey, I just like have chills. Like it's just remarkable. And for people who may be watching, we have some people that really know a lot about autism and some that are just learning or
Hmm.
maybe don't know too much. To have a child on the spectrum, right, especially like let alone any time in at any given time, but in the late 90s, and that's also when I started my career too, so can appreciate that there was very few resources. Outlooks were not optimistic, unfortunately. Thankfully, to things like ABA, IBI, we've changed the narrative on that, thank goodness. But just to have that on its own is like, okay, that's a lot for a family to go through. Your story, like others I've heard in Ontario, back in the day, you were one of the pioneers to do your research and figure out, okay, you landed in a conference and you workshop or whatnot and learned about something, this thing called ABA IBI, that gave you hope. And then not only to do that for your son, but to take that yourself and group of parents and start up an organization, a charity, nonprofit. It's just remarkable. As a center owner myself, I can
Hmm.
appreciate
Hmm.
that. In itself is just it's a remarkable feat.
I
And you have a career too. So,
Yes, yeah. So
oh
balancing
boy,
all of that,
yeah,
I made some sacrifices in
yeah,
my career. I no longer work in big Bay Street firm
sure,
practice. I'm general counsel for a company, which still a lot of hard work, but at the same time, yeah, my work life balance is a little bit better, and those are the sacrifices that I thought was necessary because obviously, when you're a father, you do whatever you can. You do whatever. You always think growing up what your goals in life are going to be, what objectives you want to set. But at the end of the day, once I said this once at our gala, once you have a child, like everything changes. Your goals in life, your real objective in life is to protect and do whatever you can for your child's well-being. I'm not saying this personally. I think we all do that as parents, and it's something I'm very proud of. I talk about the 3 Ds in terms of the journey that a parent goes through with a parent of an autistic child, when they first find out, and you know as well as I, you have a baby and everything is fine and everything, they're getting all their milestones, and then somewhere along the 15, 18, 20 month mark, things change. It's like a snap of fingers and they regress and you have no idea. So back in our day, we had very little information, more information today. So you bring your child to get assessed and you find out, they're autistic. They're on the spectrum. So that's the first D. That becomes the devastation. And then the second D is desperation. You desperately try to find what's available to help your child because you're hearing all the things they're never going to speak. They're going to be institutionalized. You don't know, blah, blah, and they're never going to be accommodated in school. They're never going to have friends, all that stuff. They're not going to have a normal life. So complete, um, what word did I use before?
Desperation.
Desperation
Yeah.
kicks in. So you're desperately trying to find what's available. And then you hear about this IBI, you hear about ABA, you hear about Shine Through, you hear about New Haven, you hear about, other good centers, and you get hope. And then you call, and then you find out that it costs $60,000 or more a year, and then depression sets in. So those are the
Yeah.
three V's of autism journey, right?
Yeah.
And the government funding program is there. It's always been questioned. It's been up and down. So there's always a level of uncertainty. And the worst part about it is the waiting lists. Unfortunately, you get that assessment, great. You find out about Shining Through, great. It's $60,000, $70,000 a year. You're on a waiting list for 3 years to get funding from the government. But so what do? You finance your house, you sell your house, you borrow, you do whatever you can to get whatever help you can for your child. Because as much as the window of opportunity, I don't think ever closes,
Mhm.
but it's obviously greater when they're younger. You get the child at an early age, at 20 months, 22 months, 24 months, you're going to make a significant more impact with a child with ABA than you are at the age of 7, 8, or 9, or 10. And we've seen it. And you can almost tell which ones have had prior ABA and those who haven't. Um, the funding thing was an interesting story with that as well. As you know, the government program started funding back in the late 90s
99, 2000, I think.
when a lawsuit commenced by Robin Weinberg and a
Yeah.
group of families, including myself.
Oh.
So Rosanna and I, and the Weinbergs, and 9 other families initiated the lawsuit against the Ontario government. So that's when the funding started.
Mhm.
We continued the lawsuit because the original funding program cut it off at the age of 5, 6, rather 6. The understanding being, the rationale being that it wasn't really medical, and then the school system would take over.
Yeah.
My son was in the school system at the time, and my wife and I made a choice to to remove Freddie from school and put him in a program that cost me at the time $58,000.
Mhm.
And I remember testifying in court, and the argument from the government at the time was it's not scientifically proven, and the kids over the age of 6 really don't benefit.
Mm.
And I remember saying succinctly that, look, despite the fact that I'm a professional and I make a decent income, I'm not rich, and I had a choice to either leave my son in the educational system where I pay nothing for the programs the government says exists, or I spend $58,000 a year, which I don't have, for a program that I think is helping my child. Now, I'm not stupid and I'm not rich. I took him out of school and I put him in a program, which means that
Yeah.
he is benefiting from it. I do see the progress, right?
Yeah.
So, long story short, we ended up winning that trial, but we
Yeah.
ultimately lost at the Court of Appeal. But nevertheless, I think the government, through its wisdom, saw that there was some benefit in the funding program continued.
Yeah.
Ironically, my son had already bypassed the age, so he never got any funding in the first place. So,
Oh, he didn't?
no, no, but it's okay. The fact that we got it for the rest of the families was more important
Yeah.
than anything else.
Yeah.
And as I mentioned, Shining Through, we're a charitable organization, so we have a fundraiser every year,
Yeah.
and we have 13 to 1,400 people attend a small charity event. We have the greatest supporters. They've really bought into it. They understand what we're doing, and we're not Heart and Stroke Foundation. We're not Princess Margaret Hospital, or anything like that. But we have great support, and we allow the families to benefit through a ticket selling program, or a silent off auction program, that whatever they contribute in
Mhm.
terms of sales, they can create a subsidy program for their child.
Oh, wow.
Right? So it allows them to help fund for their own child in our center. The money belongs to the center, but they can use that money for their child, which obviously gives them great motivation and incentive to do what they can. We've been very lucky. And as
Yeah.
I mentioned, our flagship location In Woodbridge, we've since grown now.
Mm-hmm.
We've actually have another location not too far from you,
Mm-hmm.
where we are today, called Beecroft. That was
Yeah.
an existing location, a center. Uh, and back in the day, I forget the time period now, I'm losing track of time, but they had called us expressing an interest of our, well, whether or not we had an interest to take over their
Mm-hmm.
center. And our objective at the time was to help as many kids at the lowest cost possible.
Mm-hmm.
So that gave us one box to check, helping more kids.
Mm-hmm.
Fortunately, the cost part we never were able to catch up on, but we do
Yeah.
what we can.
Yeah.
So we opened up the Beecroft Center. Then we joined forces with a private school in Streetsville.
Mm-hmm.
We have another program there as well, where we allow kids to transition to the classroom,
It's
and
great.
we have another one in Thunder Bay. So
Oh, wow.
yeah, so
Yeah.
we've grown.
Oh,
Yeah, we've grown.
amazing.
Yeah,
Amazing. So I've been to the Woodbridge and the Beecroft location. I haven't been to all of them,
yeah,
but certainly from those two sites, it's just remarkable work that's being done and really important work. And as you know as well as I do, unfortunately, there's capacity issue.
absolutely.
Uh, So we all do the best we can within, our scope of expertise to offer services. It's amazing what you guys have done. Not only have you done it, but you've done it. You have a incredible reputation, and reputation is backed by results of really amazing quality service for the
Oh,
children. This is key.
absolutely. I hope I can mention names. Our
Yeah,
clinical
mhm.
director, Sherry
She's
Bergman,
amazing. Yeah,
she is amazing,
yeah,
and if I can pat myself on the back, only because she actually started her career
yeah.
in our home program at home,
Yes.
when we were desperately trying to find help for our son before these center-based programs existed. I remember posting ads at York University, George Brown College, Humber College, all the
Mhm.
universities looking for therapists to run an ABA program for our autistic son. Probably nobody probably even heard of what that was, but
Yeah,
a number of people applied, and Sherry was one of them. So she got her initial training actually within our home, and her first
yeah,
client customer was our son Freddie.
yeah.
She went on to improve herself, got her PhD, and now is regarded as one of the top leading ABA clinical directors in the country. I would say,
Absolutely. I
like
agree.
yourself.
Yeah, we have
Uh,
very similar paths, me and Sherry, and I
exactly.
know Sherry very well.
Yeah.
And like myself, like her, we've all been committed
Yeah.
to. I also started in a home based,
That's right.
back in the day, didn't even know what it really was, and it was a growth through learning, experiential growth, and then a lot of us, like Sherry as well, and myself, we go back to school,
Yes.
master's, PhD,
Yes.
whatever it takes, right?
Yeah.
In that driving purpose. I don't want to speak for Sherry, but in conversations that we've had, it's the commitment to the kids. If there's no other way to summarize it, and they deserve the best quality services, and you guys have shown that even through your staff, right?
The commitment to the kids is an incredible personality trait of the instructors that work at a center like Shine Through it.
Mm-hmm.
Because as you know, some of these kids can be difficult and it could be gut wrenching. And some of these kids will lash out and strike. And it's not a high paying job,
Mm-hmm.
especially at the lower level instructor level. And yet they just seem so committed and passionate trying to help. And the smile on an instructor's face when they see that child
Mm-hmm.
um, achieve a certain goal, get on to the next step. Because every child has their own individualized program, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when they see them learn and get on to the next thing, and that smile on their face is just, it's almost worth more than money, but nothing is. But
Mm-hmm.
but you know what
Yeah.
I mean. The gratification of knowing you're making a difference is huge, but it's a tough job.
Yeah.
And turnover rates are high because it's a tough job and it's not a high paying job. So those that stay for long periods of time, you really got to appreciate their
Absolutely.
passion and their commitment to helping these children.
Yeah. And I always think too, even if it was paid, like the pay is, of course, we all need to make a living, don't get me wrong, but that's not like this is something that you really have to have your heart in, and that's what drives you. And naturally, especially at the frontline position, it's an entry level position, and you do see change. It's just it's a piece of what happens. A lot of people actually go on and they get promoted, or they make lateral shifts, and they spread their wings into, we've seen it even in the
Right.
education system or other places. So they're all doing good work, even if they are not with it. I love people stay forever, but look, feel go into families, whatever. There's all kinds of things that happen. But the commitment, you go back to that and the quality. So, when you guys were starting, and even to this day, you've been so committed to back what we used to call IBI, intensive behavioral intervention, ABA, comprehensive ABA. The terms have evolved, but the notion of it's based on the science of ABA, and it's individualized for each child, and depending on the child's needs, there may be certain dosages. Of course, we love to get them as young as we can,
Sure.
but we also like you said, like we can teach older kids too, and so this is something that we know to be effective. Maybe back in the day they were questioning the science, but now there's like nobody can question that anymore. There's
Exactly.
so much evidence to
Yeah.
support this. So, but for you guys, these parents, your group of parents, and even to this day, you've committed to ABA. So why ABA for you guys? Why stick to that?
Well, frankly, we saw the benefit of it, and we read it. We read the information. We saw. We listened to the experts. We saw what it was doing to the children, and we figured, okay, this is working. So let's stick to what we know works and
Mhm.
what we're good at. I'm sure there are other things you can do, I'm not technical enough and smart enough to realize what they're called, but and I know there are other centers out there that do all other kinds of treatment and
Sure.
therapy, which are probably positive and beneficial. But you could only be good at one thing and one thing only, I think.
Yeah.
And you should, do your best to be the best that you can in what you think works the best. And we thought that, ABA, IBI, um, was what these children needed, particularly at an early age, to help them not so much learn, but also deal with the behavioral parts of it.
Hmm.
One of the things we learned from Dr. Leaf when we first met him was, work on the child's behaviors because the learning will come afterwards.
Mm.
Children don't typically get thrown or shunned at school because they can't learn. It's because of their behaviors. So teach them to basically deflect their behaviors or think of the right term. You know the term more than
Yeah.
I do, because that'll help them advance. The
Yeah.
learning will come a lot easier when you can deflect or eliminate the behaviors that get
For
in the way.
sure. Yeah.
And so we saw that as something that was viable, something that was doable, something we were good at. So we continue to do that. We only have so much space in our center.
Mhm.
So in terms of being able to provide what we think works, we stayed with the ABA IBI model.
That's great. And I actually believe that's part of why you've been so successful. You've committed to an evidence based practice, committed to the quality, and the results show, right? And I agree with you. And from a professional perspective, I always say, like, we're not the end all and be all for every child on the spectrum.
No.
In fact, and running an ABA center myself, I get calls and I'm the first to say, like, look, I'm not here to help every child with autism. I'm not saying
Okay.
like that. And if we don't think that our services are appropriate for your child. An example may be something like if there's a stronger mental health component to it. I'm a psychologist too, but again, I can't do everything. So I may say, like for sure, there's like some really good evidence based mental health treatment. This is not what we do here. So, yes, absolutely, your child needs help, or, maybe they have some oral motor stuff, SLP can help, whatever it may be. It's not to say that there's not other important stuff out there, but to be able to say, this is what I can commit to. And you guys, as an organization, this is what you're committed to. And we're going to do it well. And you've been, I mean, look, the results show, and even the time frame is remarkable from you opened your doors 1999 and you're operational 4 locations today. That's just, I mean, that speaks for itself.
Yes, and we've tried to do more. Ideally, in the utopian world, yeah, in the perfect world, for as far as our children are concerned, is that we take them at a young age, we give them enough training, education that they can ultimately transition into a school.
Yes.
Sometimes they need help transitioning to school. In the perfect world, there'd be a great partnership between centers like ours
Mm-hmm.
and the school boards, where they would allow shine through therapists, one of your therapists, to go with the child in that classroom and be that shadow, that mentor, that supervisor for that child. Unfortunately, that doesn't exist, but that would be helpful. So there's a lot of obstacles still in the way for the perfect scenario.
Yeah.
As a result, we tend to have now at our center older children because the parents are fearful of putting them into an educational system, or they don't think they belong. They think they'll just be shunned and not taken care of properly. I'm not putting down the system. I just
Yeah.
realize that the resources aren't there.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is, something I should probably say, but uh, my son went through high school and on this special needs program in high school. And every year we would meet with a member of the board of trustees, uh, the head of the special needs program, a vice principal of the school, principal of the school, and they would set out the program for my son. And they're allowed to be in school till they're 21 years old. And I remember the last year my wife and I went and we heard the spiel at the beginning of the year. And I guess, body language, it looked like I wasn't really paying attention. And so when somebody had asked me if I was okay and if I had any questions, and I just stopped and I looked at them and I said, everything that you're saying to me, I said, I'm going to give you a sports analogy. If this were a football team, you've got a great playbook.
Mhm.
You don't have a quarterback. You don't have a wide receiver. You don't have a front line. You don't have a back. You don't have defensive end. You've got nobody to execute these plays. What you're telling me is fantastic. I'm all in. But I've seen it now for 6 years. It doesn't happen. The execution doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And it's not for lack of trying. It's for lack of resources, lack of the right people, lack of room, whatever. It's not set up properly for it. But I know they mean well.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it turned out to be, with all due respect, glorified babysitting in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Not for the ones that are high functioning. That's the problem. We use the autism
Yes.
spectrum now a little too loosely because
Yes.
somebody with, and I don't like using the word Asperger's, but a really high functioning
Yeah.
autistic person, they can get along. They might have some social quirks. They're,
Yeah.
what we might consider when we were younger because we were mean, weird. That kid is weird, but otherwise very functional in a
Yeah.
classroom. I'm talking about the real autistic child, boy or girl, that
Yeah.
has behavioral issues, that has, that tactile problems, that has needs help,
Yeah.
right?
More
Needs
more
help,
skill deficits.
more skill deficit.
Yeah.
The average person in the classroom won't be able to handle that.
Yeah.
The the trained therapist
Yeah.
knows how to get that child back on point,
Yeah.
get him back to task. They know how
Get
to
them
do it.
learning. Help them learn.
They,
Yeah.
I'll never forget
Yeah.
when we decided to put Freddie and Shiny through full time. Just prior to that, we met with one of his teachers at the school in the school system. And she was saying how Freddie now is, exploring more. We saw him the other day picking up a piece of a puzzle, and he was looking at it, very intently. And I said, "So let me get this straight. So he had a puzzle piece, and he was looking at it. Was he going like, yes, yes? He was like, he was stimming. I spent thousands of dollars to stop him from doing that, and you're encouraging it. So there's a disconnect. And again, I
Yeah.
couldn't blame them because they didn't
They
know.
didn't
They
know.
didn't know,
Yeah.
right? So there's that whole disconnect, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and I mean, look, for some kids, like we have kids who have engage in stereotypy. It depends on what it
of
is and if it
course,
interferes with learn. There's all these nuances to it too,
right?
right?
Yeah,
So sure, when they're on the breaks, like if that's your favorite thing to do, that's cool.
go do it.
But when it acts as a barrier to learning,
Yes,
there's nuances to all of this. And I've had this similar experience with the school system. It's not like, and there's some pockets of like really like special things happening, but it's the system as a whole is really not designed
no,
for kids. Like you said, maybe for some kids on the spectrum it's okay because it's a spectrum, but for kids who have more profound needs, we're not there, and that's a conversation that needs to be had. And not only had but action taken. Even more broadly, I'm very passionate about, because it's most of the kids that I work with are kids who are on the more moderate to profound end of the spectrum. These children, you've seen too, the remarkable things that treatment can do for them, right? We know that
sure,
and if it's done well, and of course, there's qualifiers to all this, and families need to be engaged. You guys are
totally,
all engaged.
totally, yeah,
But I believe every child deserves a chance, right? And that's and it's not for any. I'm not faulting anybody in the school. This is a very there's this very specialized approach. I love your analogy of playbook, and
hmm
like that's what it is.
hmm
It's they're like, where are you going to get the quarterback? Your defensive line, wherever else, like anything else you need, your offense, like this is it. This is very specialized. But here's I think the amazing thing is like that it works.
yeah,
You know what I mean? That's the hope. You guys back in the 90s, when I was talking to families back then, unless they fell upon something like a workshop, people were told, well, I don't think your kid can really
oh
learn,
yeah,
you know?
yeah,
And there's this, so you've got your 3Ds, and then at the end of that there's like this, there's the hope, right?
Totally.
Like it's a game changer, and we just, now we got to work on like accessibility to that for all
Absolutely.
kids, you
And,
know.
and the accessibility issue is becoming a larger problem because, as mentioned earlier, in terms of the resources available to school, some of our children, even some of our original children, are still at Shine Through, but
Hmm.
they're not children anymore.
Yeah.
They're young adults,
Hmm.
and we're not equipped for that. We're not that. And at the goodness of the heart, we've created learning to live programs and all that, but we just don't have the space or the resources to handle that. And so now we know there's a huge need for that component.
Yeah.
And most of these kids are still in our center because a the worry, the fear of leaving the nest, the
Yeah.
sense of comfort that we've provided Shine Through, but also the fear of going into the mainstream system. They're just going to be set aside. At least they know it's shining through. They're being taken care of, and not by, I don't mean babysat. I mean, given tasks to do, given instructions and stuff like that. Um, but we can't be everything to everybody. We're
Hmm.
not equipped to be a young adult center. So now
Yeah.
there's a need, and I hear it all the time. We get phone calls from people with their, they're 20 years. I have a son that's 20 years old. I'm looking for a place to bring. Well, sorry, we're not that place.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of that. And then the residential portion later on. And a lot of these parents are fearful what's going to happen to my child when I get old. Where are they going to go? Where are they going to live? I have. I'm not going to mention names, but I have one of my families to Shine Through. They have two autistic children, and that's a big fear for them. Where
Yeah.
are their kids going to go when they're long gone?
Yes.
No, I'm lucky. Freddie has an older brother. Sorry, an older sister and a younger brother who argue over who's going to have him at the end in terms of.
Yeah.
But right now, I can only focus on what we do today for the younger children, and the need in terms of having centers like ours still exists, and the financial requirement to keep them there still exists. I used to always say I have the pleasure of being the speaker at our gala, and I've never written a speech.
Mhm.
I've never, in fact, I write things down to remember, to think, and those are the things I screw up all the time. Anything I write down, I screw up all the time. But I've never had to say a speech because, quite frankly, I live it. And I just think of a story and I run with the story and run with an emotion. And I judge my success on how many people I get to cry. And it usually translates in more dollars at the event. But what I remember I was saying one night, and I think I might have said it again too, that uh, our we love knowing that a child is leaving Shining Through because they no longer need to be there, as
Mhm.
opposed to they could no longer afford to be there.
Mm.
And
Very good.
we love the graduating kid is
Yes.
moving on to the next level, whatever that may be,
Yeah.
as opposed to leaving because they can't afford to be
Yeah.
there. And
I,
we've had that too.
good. Yeah. Graduation, I agree. I say our job is to put ourselves out of a job. I tell parents that even at the beginning.
Yeah,
That's my job, is to
yeah,
put myself out of a job. What that looks like for every child is different, but that's the greatest day. When I don't want you to stay with me for,
yeah.
we're
I don't
here
want
to
you here.
empower
Yeah,
you and your family to be able to, live, each child lives their best life.
right.
And that's the best reason why,
Yes,
kids leave. But you've mentioned the financial piece a number of times. And I think this is an important thing for people to understand who may be watching or don't really understand ABA. It comes up a lot, because I look at it as an investment. And I'm not talking about just the family, I'm talking about as a society, it's an
totally,
investment, right?
totally.
So, but it's a misunderstood investment. I find this actually very interesting that it comes up a lot in conversation, because when we talk about access to other, and I believe it's healthcare. That's my, I got my training in the States, and
So do I.
that's how, it's widely, in fact, it's a part of insurance mandates, and a part of healthcare packages. It's mandated, a part of the Mental Health Parity Act, a beautiful thing that they have down there,
Right,
to say that health is all health, whether it's physical or psychological. And as a result of that, and many populations and communities have benefited from that. The autism community is one of them, and ABA is part of that. It's not the only part of the healthcare treatment, but it is a part of healthcare treatment for individuals on the spectrum that need it.
right. Of course.
So I find it fascinating that if we look at it from that lens, we don't really talk about other healthcare treatment in terms of dollars and cents. We just say, especially in Canada, because we're here in Canada, we have people who watch across North America, and also potentially globally. But in Canada, where we are, we talk about, universal healthcare, it's like almost considered a right to some degree. We
Hmm.
pride ourselves on this
Hmm.
here, accessibility to healthcare. And we don't talk about costs of other healthcare, but we talk about it for ABA, right? It kind of gets like, oh, this is so expensive. Quite frankly, research shows the opposite. You get it on the cheap because we know what on the other side, right? You are investing in incredible things for that child and that family to be able to learn that actually you are paying if you want to look at it like a fraction of what you get in the end, right? And the alternatives are what it's much more costly to have children who don't receive therapy. But for people to understand, because it's often talked, of course, because families are facing like, how do I come up with this? And you
Right.
guys have done such a remarkable job and through your charity to help families. Why does it cost? Like, what is ABA? What is this thing? Where does this, it's not like we're all,
Why
running
does it
around
cost?
like, yeah, why does it cost this money?
I can tell you, I mean, not being on the finance committee because I'm better with words than I am with numbers, but just from a pure,
Yeah.
big picture perspective, um, for the longest time, we used to charge a certain fee at Shining Through, which was actually $15,000 less than the actual cost. So for every child
Mhm.
that was coming in, we were losing $15,000
Mhm.
per kid. But it got to a point we could no longer, it wasn't sustainable. So you have a facility, so you're either paying rent or you're paying a mortgage and you're paying repairs to keep it going. You have to have a clinical director who's properly licensed because otherwise the whatever funding's in place, the child won't get the funding unless you have the proper person,
That's
and
right.
and they need to make a decent living for one. You have to have your therapist. It's 1-on-1, so each child has a therapist. Even the front level, you're looking at a minimum of 42,000 dollars a year, which is nothing. Who can survive on forty two
Yeah.
thousand dollars today? But that's what we're looking at. So there's that. Then if you number of kids that you have, you're going to need a supervisor because your clinical director can't be
Yeah.
responsible for 30 children, 30 programs. They can oversee over the supervisor. So you're adding a supervisor in that. And then you have to run the business as well. So you have to have somebody who actually runs the business that
Yeah.
keeps it fiscally responsible. So you have a business manager or an executive director. Then you have administration people who pay the bills and so on and so forth. So
Yeah.
it starts to add up. And there's your cost. And we only got to the point where we actually started charging the actual cost this year. But
Yeah.
otherwise, we were losing $15,000 per child,
Yeah.
and our business manager as well. But our frontline staff, they're not making a huge wage,
Yeah.
and so we're trying to keep the costs down.
Yeah.
Our board is completely voluntary.
Yeah.
Um, we do whatever we can to keep the costs down, but it adds up. It's as
Sure.
simple as that.
Well, in order to service the children, right? And that's what it is. At the end of the day, this is what it takes, as
Yeah,
it would for any other
yeah,
facility or organization to do so across again any kind of healthcare.
right.
And in fact, so that this is it's good. It's good for people to understand because I don't think people necessarily understand what is just hit the money. No, and it's the number of hours too. We're not talking about a kid coming like 1 hour a week
No, exactly. It's the
to
full to get
therapy.
to get the pure full benefit of it. We have a half day program and a full day program.
Hmm.
If you're coming only a couple of days a week, well, first of all, it becomes an administrative nightmare,
Yeah.
and secondly, the lack of consistency. You're not helping anybody. You're just going through the motions more than
Yeah.
anything else, right? Especially if a child that really needs it, couple days a
Right.
week,
Yeah.
and then at home, the parents aren't continuing because as well as I, proper program, the parents have to be on board and have to kind of
Yes.
continue what they're
Yeah.
being taught at the center. Otherwise, one step forward, two steps back,
Yeah.
and we've seen that.
Yeah.
And it's not it's a hard demand on the parents, but to do it right, it's required.
Yeah.
But it's funny what you say though about an investment. And I mentioned earlier about testifying in court. I remember stealing a commercial line saying, you could pay a little now or a lot later, because at the end of the day, these young adults will be institutionalized. They'll be on the welfare system.
Yeah.
They'll have no other way to survive, as opposed to giving a hope and opportunity to perhaps maybe earn an income, earn a living on their own.
That's right.
And
Yeah.
we have a couple of children that got their first paycheck working
Mhm.
in hours. My son Freddie worked as
Yeah.
a volunteer at a Longo's grocery store. He
Yeah.
started off stacking shelves, and then working at the cash register. Granted, he had one of the cashiers behind him to watch him,
Yeah.
but the sense of pride and the sense of being useful
Yeah.
was huge. And going to give dibs to Longo's for allowing us to have,
Yeah.
and they allowed us to do that without me bringing in a supervisor for
Yeah.
him, which was huge. And that was one of the conditions I had. And, we talked about it for a couple of months, and they brought him in,
Yeah.
and he was loved and he was great.
Amazing.
Unfortunately, he had to leave because he got ill, but now he's better again. And
Yeah.
hopefully we bring him back. But
Amazing.
yeah, so the cost of it is an investment. You can give them that opportunity to actually be contributing members of society versus part of the welfare state.
Yeah, absolutely. And the degree of the cost, yeah, I will say, just in case people are, again, go back to the spectrum, it depends on the degree of need of the child. So
Sure, of
not
course.
every child needs an intensive program, and that's okay.
Absolutely.
But for those
That do.
that do,
Yeah.
that's what is maximally beneficial for them.
Yeah.
And you see wonderful impact, as you mentioned, even like there's employment impact, not only for them. I hear a lot, I don't know if you've heard this too, but, or maybe experienced it yourself, but it also, when a child is doing well and giving the chances that they deserve, then it also empowers the family. So oftentimes when a child is in, whatever type of educational setting or whatever it might be for that child that isn't working for them, then also often one, if not sometimes two, of their parents can't work either.
Totally.
So we've heard even stories, and this isn't like our driving purpose. Like we're here to teach the kids skills and empower them and everything, and have them lead wonderful lives, and it, because it's also the right thing to do. It's not just a financial thing; it's the right thing to do for the kids. But families will tell us that, I could go back to work now. Because like I feel it at eat like my child's doing okay. I'm not scared someone's going to call me and ask me to come pick up my kid in the middle of the day, or whatever it might be. So I can also participate in the workforce too. There's so many, benefits to children getting the therapy that they deserve.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I commend people like yourself and others that have gone out of their way to help create situations and centers and help for the families. I think I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the names of the other members who helped create Shining
Yes, please
Through.
do.
The John DiBartolo and his family, Umberto Martini, Ted Leader, Val Girardi, myself, and the fifth Beatle, George Martin. We had the sixth father, John DiMassimo, who's, although he wasn't with us when we started, he literally joined our board 6 months after that, and he's been with us ever since. So um, these people are fine human beings, and they have a heart of gold, and most of them, as I said, are Italian, and you got to sit in one of our board meetings where you can get pretty colorful at times, but it's part of the passion of where to get us where we are
Yeah.
today. I often, when I interview future board members, I kind of talk to them obviously in terms of their objectivity and what they bring and so on and so forth, and what our goals are, what our objectives are, and looking for them to add and to help. But I also make it very clear to them that our board meetings can start out very professional, but
Mhm.
ultimately you're going to get colorful language along the way because you got people here that, some are just construction workers that have that are a father or a mother of a child, and it is their biggest investment, their
Yeah.
biggest asset, their most important asset, their child. So they can get pretty colorful at times, as you can
Yeah.
appreciate.
Look, it's all driven by love, I think, right?
Absolutely,
Like that's the thing. And to be
absolutely.
at this for this long, what keeps you guys going? Like the originals, you've been at this a long time. And as you mentioned, your son is now an adult. So
Yeah.
he's not directly benefiting, although he did benefit, right? In
Y-
terms of,
Oh,
he's made tremendous gains
absolutely.
because of it. But, how do you like this is, you're getting up every day, you're making the speeches at the gala, trying to figure out ways to help families.
Some of our founding fathers, founding founders have left the board, but are
Mhm.
still involved in direct capacities. And I've been on ever since day one. And the real motivation for staying on and helping is that I know it makes a difference,
Mhm.
and I want to make sure that Shining Through becomes what we set out for it to be. And I said earlier, we're not going to make everybody happy, but we've created a niche in
Mhm.
this marketplace in this particular need, and I know it makes a difference. And when my wife and I go out and leave our son home alone at night,
Mhm.
and I know why I can do that.
Yeah.
Uh, when I went to Italy a couple years ago with my both my sons, just the three of us, and I'm thinking I'm going on a trip with an autistic young man, and I had no fear in doing that. It didn't enter my mind twice that this could be a problem. He was great,
Yeah.
and if you meet him, he's autistic. You
Yeah.
you can tell, right? There's you could, but he's friendly, loving. uh, functional in our house. He's got more chores than the other two ever had. My other two children, the normal kids, as I like to call them. He's probably more productive in our household than the other two have ever
Mhm.
been, and I know where that came from,
Yeah.
and that's why I'm still involved because I know other people can benefit from it, and I wouldn't mind somebody taking my spot at some point in time,
Yeah.
it's aside from being a dad, uh, you know, all my life I grew up, I wanted to become a lawyer. Yet the thing that I'm most proud of is shining through.
Amazing.
Yeah,
You should
yeah,
be.
yeah.
Absolutely. And I think it's important for people like Freddie's story is a really important one in terms of his path through ABA because everything you're describing is him living his best life,
Yes.
right? So absolutely does he still have some needs and the of course I've been doing at this a long time, seen many kids, and it's a lifelong disorder. I'm not,
Oh yeah.
making any claims that, there won't be still, some aspects there that the children need support in as they get into adulthood. But the things that you are sharing, even that trip to Italy, no doubt in my mind, like none whatsoever, like that is not possible without ABA.
I agree.
It's just like
Yeah.
that's the best outcome to me.
It's not a cure,
Yep.
because I don't think there is a cure.
Yep.
We know there's not a cure, but as you said earlier, it gives them a chance,
Mm-hmm.
and it improves their quality of their life, and it gives parents hope.
Yes.
And the hope of being able to do what I just said, that you wake up in the morning and you go downstairs and your son is making pancakes on the electric griddle. So granted, it's bubbly and bumpy all over the place, but he's taking the initiative to do it, and he knows and it's like, okay, that's all right. So you
Yeah.
encourage it. You're worried because you don't want the place to burn
Yeah.
down, but by the same token, he's taking the initiative because he watched you do it and he learned, and
Mhm.
and these are all the building blocks that he got from ABA,
Yeah.
and from shining through, and and I'm thankful for it.
Yeah. What do you want people to know that may be watching? Like, let's say they will have a child recently diagnosed, or they're looking for, what do I do now? What do you want them to know about your journey, about shining through? Anything, any words of wisdom that you can share with them?
Once you get over the devastation stage, there is hope, there is opportunity,
Hmm.
there are solutions. Whether you think it's ABA or IBI, I'm a big proponent of it, but there are solutions. Look to see what's available for you. But also, I probably learned this more from. I'm digressing a bit. Freddie was born with congenital heart disease. Freddie has half the functioning heart. Freddie's shouldn't even be alive today, but that's another story for another day. But I remember his cardiologist talking to us saying, treat him as normally as possible. This is before we knew he was autistic. So do find what works for your best for your child, because it's there's opportunities there. Manage your expectations, because it's not going to be a cure, but try to get the adage, go for singles and doubles. Don't worry about the home runs. You aim for the fences, but settle for a single and double. Just keep
Hmm.
pushing as far as you can. But treat your child as normal as possible. Give them as much leeway. Let them learn. Let them take chances. Our fortunate situation where we can leave Freddie alone didn't start off like that. We left him alone for 10 minutes, going to a
Yeah.
neighbor's house, and then half an hour, and then an hour checking up on him, and to the point where we can leave him all night. But try to treat your child as normally as possible, and let them tell you what their boundaries are.
Hmm.
Let them tell you what they can't do. Don't impose boundaries on them. They will tell you you'll see it in time.
Yeah.
So give them that as much rope as possible, and you'll be surprised what they can do.
That's amazing. It's also the opportunities, right? Like
Yeah,
it's giving if the opportunities aren't there, obviously within boundaries, like you said, the
of
10
course, yes.
minutes to start with or
Yeah,
whatnot. But if they don't have those chances, then children may not learn,
yeah,
right?
and
They
and,
won't learn.
and you're doing damage to yourself too,
Yeah.
because you're going to feel the pressure of not being able to enjoy your life,
Yeah.
because the guilt of a parent, the want of a parent to protect your child. But by the same token, you're helping both yourself and your child by letting them show you what they're capable of.
Absolutely. I appreciate the like candor and honesty too of sharing your like experiences as a parent. Because there's reality. Like sometimes we see these days, I feel like I feel conflicted about some of there's more information about autism, right? If we look at, back in the late 90s, you
Of
can
course.
appreciate this. Even when I was starting my career, what are you doing? What is that?
Oh
Oh,
yeah.
I don't know. I don't like, back then dating myself, that people would say like if they had seen the movie Rain Man, like that was the
Yeah,
closest that anybody
exactly.
would
Yeah,
know.
yeah,
Is that, and they're like, no, well, not every, kids
yeah,
like
yeah,
most of the kids I work with, I haven't really seen that,
yeah. I
but
tried for
okay,
it. He
sure.
can't
Yeah.
count. He can't count
Yeah,
cards.
yeah. Yeah, exactly, right?
I tried.
So yeah, yeah, it's okay. It's worth a try. But so it's so back then there wasn't a lot of information,
No.
and certainly not enough hope. I agree with that. So now we're at the stage where now there's like a lot of information, right? So almost to the I don't know how parents. I have no idea how parents dissect through all of that, because I'm like, this is my career and I've studied
It's
it,
a
and
labyrinth now.
it's just, yeah, a
Yeah,
labyrinth is
yeah.
very good way of describing it. There's also more media now on autism. I also feel conflicted about this because people get a snapshot, right? So we say
Exactly.
Rain, I'm joking about Raymond, but now there's like all these shows and all this and all that. And people, a lot of it, for whatever reason, does showcase, and this is important too. I'm all about the entire spectrum,
Hmm.
okay? But it showcases, for at least in my experience, individuals who have more skills, okay, that are maybe able to, like, we're talking about relationships and autism. Well, that's great. Like, I'm glad that we do that. We should be talking about different complexities like that, but then people get this idea, right? This is what
That it
autism is.
isn't that bad.
Yeah, or yes,
It's
yeah,
not that, and then don't
yeah,
get me wrong.
yeah,
Everybody has their challenges, but you're right. Everything that we're seeing, the good doctor and all that.
yeah,
I wish, but so their life isn't that bad. What are these autism parents complaining about? We wish our children were like that.
yeah,
It's they're focusing on a very small percentage of
yeah,
very high functioning
yeah.
people under the spectrum, right?
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
mean to
That
interrupt, but
segment,
yeah,
but yes, that's a good point. And of course, I know every parent, like, and you've said this many times, like, you love Freddie with all your heart. But in order to help him, it's important for people to understand, and that's what you guys did, is understand his needs and where you can help him get to the point where he can go on a trip and cook and do and have that, opportunity at Long Goes. Like, that didn't just happen magically.
exactly.
There was a lot of things that went on behind the scenes. So we talked about, what you want parents who maybe have a recently diagnosed child or going through that autism journey to know. But what about, like, I'm sure you've had many interactions like this with the general community.
Yeah.
What is important for the general community to understand about autism?
Well, sense of awareness of the of autism is huge,
Mm.
and because I think the people become the children become much more accepting, and society becomes more accepting of their deficiencies or their inabilities. So I want the rest of the community to understand that that these children are they're normal. It's just that their wiring isn't the same. So just be a little bit more understanding, be a little more compassionate, right?
Mhm.
Uh, it's and I think we've come a long way.
Yeah.
I really do. I really do. And I think actually I think the kids that are more profound tend to get a better dose of compassion than the kids that are like Asperger's that are awkward or weird.
Interesting.
Because
Yeah.
they're the ones that don't have the friends, and they're the ones that get picked on, and they're whereas my son never got picked on because people was it was obviously clear that he wasn't,
Yeah.
he had something. So the kids in the high school were kind to him, and I think awareness helped that.
Hmm.
So for the rest of the community, when they see somebody or hear about autism, understand that it's not the good doctor and it's not Rain Man. It's a real diverse degree of a spectrum, and you could be some really profound people. And when you see that child flapping his hand and having a temper tantrum in the grocery store, don't say something like, "Oh, if that was my kid, I'd show him."
Yeah.
Like understand what that poor parent is going through as well, and be helpful.
Yeah.
Be helpful.
I mean, look, if people were doing that in the out in the general community on a regular basis, like, my goodness, like, it'd be good for everybody in society, right? Not
Absolutely.
just that
Yeah.
family and that child, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's understanding that you don't know what's happening there, and if you can help, that's great. No need to cast judgment.
No.
What I've seen certainly in my career, talking with families, is that when things like that happen, unfortunately, they do. Where there's colored commentary about whatever's happening. Sometimes I have families who will say, "Okay, that's it. Like, we're not." we're not going out to the grocery store together anymore or anything like that. So you isolate actually people from society when you do that,
Right.
right? It's hard. It's not easy for, depending on, again, the child's needs. It's not easy for a family to sometimes take their child out to community events, or just, anyways, just a regular trip to the grocery store. Sometimes for some families is a big deal.
It is. But you know as well as I, if they break it down step by step,
That's right.
the likelihood of success is significantly better if you break it down step by step, as opposed to expect you like manage your expectations.
Hmm.
Don't expect them to be normal all of a sudden because you brought them somewhere. I hate using the word normal, but you like for
Yeah,
just for simplicity of
sure.
terms, right? But so you got to break it down
Yeah.
and work towards it, and that's where the parent, as well as I, the as I said earlier, the an ABA program is very structured. When the child gets home, I know it's not easy for a parent to be structured with their children. They got lives to do, but you have to remember a part of that, right? Because
Mhm.
that's what working with your child,
Yeah,
right?
it's that, yeah, to carry on some of
That
the strategies.
consistency, yeah,
Now, I believe as a good professional, our job is to figure out how to integrate that into your lives, right? Because we need to figure out and understand that parents' capacities are
totally,
differ depending on
totally,
what's happening with that family and
yeah,
what's going on. I mean, I don't know how many families I work with that are even just sleep deprived, because their child doesn't sleep at night. This is
yeah,
another level of appreciation
yeah,
for people to understand. Kids who maybe go to sleep and wake up at 1 a.m. and that's it, they're up for the day,
yeah,
or they don't go to sleep until 2 a.m. and the parents still have to get up to work or take care of their children, whatever it might
yeah,
be,
yeah,
right? So there's all sorts of different complexities that are happening, but it is, so I am a huge proponent of families need to be engaged,
yeah,
right?
absolutely,
This is a
absolutely,
major game changer for families.
yeah,
They need to understand, what's going on in terms of their child's needs and progress and all that stuff. So
right.
these are all, like, such important things to keep in mind. We've talked a lot about shining through and, its journey. Why shining through? Why the name shining through? Where did you guys come up with that?
Basically, we just thought, the child's abilities, with a little bit of love, a little bit of attention, a little bit of what we do, will shine through. It's as simple as that. It's below the surface. Get below the surface, and their
Yeah.
ability, their true self, their true capacity, capabilities will shine through. And that's where the name came from.
Amazing. It's so true. And you've seen it,
Yeah.
like,
Oh,
over,
absolutely.
how many kids do you, like, ballpark, do you think that you guys have impacted at this point over your,
Oh, Jesus.
that you've helped shine through their capabilities?
I'm going to generalize, but it'll be
Yeah.
well over a couple of hundred for sure, I believe.
Amazing.
And I'm very pleased with it.
Yeah.
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 Could we be better? I'm sure. Could we
Yeah.
ultimately, like I said earlier, had we stayed with one location,
Mm-hmm.
that goal of ho- zero cost, we probably could achieve that because we
Mm-hmm.
raised enough money to actually, new family comes into or it's taken care of. We could have done, especially those that are partly funded. We could have zero cost to them.
Mm-hmm.
But we also want to help more kids, and
Yeah.
the pie is only so big, and when you got more
Yeah.
people eating from the pie, you can't do that. But ideally, if that was our main goal, was to help as many kids at zero cost. Um, as I said, we're helping the many kids, but unfortunately, not the zero cost part.
Well, I mean, the impact that you guys have done, starting with, therapy in your basement, did you say?
Yeah, that's my yeah,
And then this building that you guys took over. I mean, it's just, what a journey to the historical site that you have, your first site. It's a beautiful site.
yeah. We've been
Um,
fortunate. We've had both city council in Toronto,
mm-hmm.
city council in Vaughan
Mm-hmm.
that have bought into us, and
Yeah.
because I said to them, they realize they have a problem too, and
Yeah.
we're a part of a solution to the problem that they have.
I always think they're lucky to have any of us in their communities, to be
Absolutely,
honest, right?
absolutely.
Because, I mean, look, and I'm sure this is the case with Shining Through. There's a lot of children from the community or neighboring communities, right, that are coming, their families, the impact that they're making on those families, those children, and then the community at large. It's like, it's a win-win, right?
Mhm.
There's a need for this service. We know this. We do the best we can with the children. We can serve. You guys have set the bar for that. I think in
Thank you.
Ontario, it's really remarkable. You've done incredible work, and your journey serves as proof of what is possible. Like, the shining through, not only for that child but for the family, the staff, for the community. It's just remarkable, and so I really hope that people take this as inspiration for, yes, there's more work to be done. I think at so many different levels, including at, higher levels to get kids more access to services, but it's possible, right? And
Absolutely.
each individual child counts. They matter. Make an impact in that child's life. It's an incredible gift to the community.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Everybody stands to gain at the end of the day.
Everybody stands to gain. And what you guys have done serves as a template for so many of us. And we thank you, Fred. It was so
It's
wonderful to
my
have
pleasure,
you.
Nancy, and
Thank you for
thank you
the,
for all your hard work too, because I know you're one of the leading people in this industry as well. So thank you for everything you've done for
thank
the
you.
families of children with autism.
Thank you
You
for
should be
saying
very
that.
proud. No, as I said, I'm very pleased with what you've done, and thank you.
Thank you. Well, the feeling is mutual, and you guys are just a wonderful evidence proof of what is possible. So thank
Thank
you
you
to
very
you.
much.
Thank you to all the families, all the dads, all the moms, and that started it and have kept it going. Thank
Thank
you
you
for
very
being
much.
here.
Thanks.